Hi, it's JP Gedeon. Over the past few weeks, I've received so many messages from subscribers and followers about my anxiety series through COVID, asking me for more information about anxiety. As I work with my clients, I often ask them, so how are you feeling? Are you feeling anxious? Is there anything I can do to help? And interestingly, in so many cases, the answer I hear is, no, I think I'm okay. But in digging a little deeper with the clients, as well as with the folks sending me messages, I've come to realize that many people define anxiety in a very unidimensional, solitary kind of a way, where if it's not exactly in this box of feeling fluttery and having my brain have sort of brain palpitations where I can't stop thinking about something and I feel kind of all up and ungrounded, then it mustn't be anxiety. So, to respond to that, I've decided to put up this video, which is going to point out 11 sneaky ways that anxiety can crop up in your body that you may not recognize in order to help with that challenge. So, let's get started. The first way that anxiety can creep up on us without us noticing is what I'm calling channeling. Are you noticing that you're baking banana bread every night or every morning? Are you rushing around the house cleaning every nook and cranny perhaps, or grabbing a little paintbrush and touching up any crack you see? Maybe you're cleaning the car and vacuuming it every day. Channeling is the act of taking the anxiety that we are feeling and pouring it into a set of activities that for a time distract us from the anxiety and make us feel more in control. Now this makes sense because at times of high disruption, as we're experiencing right now, many of us feel a loss of control, and that in itself is destabilizing. And in response, sometimes what we do is try to gain back control by trying to engage in activities that cause us to feel as though we're getting something done and cause us to feel generative and useful. Now, this may not sound like a horrible thing. In fact, in video number 4 of this series, we talked about having activities and a daily routine that we create and follow to help us feel as though we do have control. But in this case, the activity can go off balance and become too much. And the reason for that has to do with the chemistry surrounding it. When we are engaging in activity in order to gain a sense of control, the engagement of that activity will release dopamine in our brains. Dopamine is the reward neurotransmitter, and anytime we experience reward, we want to go back and do that behavior again. And so the feedback loop of activity and dopamine back to activity again could actually knock us off balance and move us to a place where we rely on too much activity without allowing ourselves to rest. In video number 4, we talk about a number of activities we can individually and personally take to counteract this imbalance and lead us to a place of better health, things like mindfulness and meditation. If you haven't seen that video, here's a link for you right there. The second item on our list is what I'm calling sleep disruption. Are you having a hard time staying asleep or falling asleep? Do you find that insomnia is creeping up or restlessness? Perhaps you're experiencing odd dreams that wake you up in the middle of the night. This is another way that anxiety could appear in your life. And the reason for that is because, as we discussed in video number 1 of the series, anxiety creates a certain chemical reaction in our brain. That chemical reaction is an actual physical change, which in fact will affect function. So if you find that your sleep is being disrupted, there is a good chance that anxiety is the culprit. The third item on our list is what I'm calling the slowdown. Are you feeling more tired than normal as the day progresses? Are you feeling that if you were a night person, you're now maybe an early evening person? And if you're an evening person, by the time late afternoon comes, you're kind of drained? This slowdown can be the result of anxiety, because anxiety working in the background does, in fact, drain our emotional and physical batteries. It requires energy to maintain anxiety while we go through the rather complicated routines we have to go through at an unstable time like this. So if you are finding that come 5 o'clock in the afternoon, you're sitting on the couch trying to relax and nodding off every now and again, and that you can't stay up nearly as late in the night as you could, this is a documented potential side effect of anxiety. The fourth item on that list is what I'm calling apathy. Have you noticed maybe that many of the things that used to thrill you or excite you or interest you don't much anymore? That you just seem to be a little bit lukewarm about many things? This is not uncommon at times of disruption like this, and the reason is actually fairly simple. The reason is that many of us have been taken away from things in our lives that do actually provide us a sense of meaning, like work or school or certain hobbies and gatherings. And this meaninglessness in itself drains our battery and wears us down. Now, in addition to that, news coverage coming at us from all sides is rife with difficult stories that are emotionally challenging or saddening or angering or even just plain confusing. And we carry that heavy weight on our shoulders as we try to manage the loss of control from this whole pandemic, plus the loss of meaning that we're getting from not having the activities that meant a lot to us. And so the result from that could be a sense of apathy, where we feel lukewarm about everything, because honestly, allowing ourselves to feel the full weight of what we have to carry these days could be just a bridge too far, considering everything. Now, the one thing I want to point out, though, is that if you are experiencing this kind of apathy for activities that you truly used to adore and love, there is the possibility that your anxiety is moving into a light depression. And if this is one of your experiences, I encourage you to talk to someone, a family member, a therapist, a professional, to determine whether or not more intensive intervention is required. The fifth item on our list is what I'm calling hypervigilance. Perhaps you've noticed that you startle easily. Maybe you feel jittery, or an unexpected noise just affects you a little longer than it used to. That is another way that anxiety can present itself to you. And the reason for that is the chemistry that creates anxiety raises our level of alert, especially because of the uncertainty in the environment. And as a result, we scan the environment in order to find threat. But that heightened level of alert can result in hypervigilance, being overly ready for a potential threat, and therefore being more jumpy, being more skittery, and just being able to startle much more easily. The sixth item on our list is what I'm calling bodily aches and pains. Sometimes anxiety doesn't present to us on an emotional basis at all. Sometimes it comes out of our bodies physically by giving us uncomfortable symptoms. Perhaps you've experienced that you're getting more headaches or dizziness, perhaps some insomnia, as we talked about earlier, rashes, maybe trembling hands, or an upset stomach, or heart palpitations, or perhaps it's just a general sense of restlessness. These are very likely physical ways that anxiety is presenting itself to you. And if you are finding that you're experiencing many of these symptoms more frequently, perhaps it would be useful to talk to a professional about them and seek ways to counteract them and create a new sense of balance. The seventh item on our list is what I'm calling forgetfulness. Have you been forgetting little things all over the place here and there? Maybe you're leaving your keys somewhere and you can't find them, maybe more than once a day. Maybe you have a list of 3 things you want to buy when you get to the store, but when you get there, you can only remember 2. This is another very common way that anxiety could present itself, and many of us are experiencing this very thing. Now, the reason that many of us are experiencing this at this time is because COVID has created a series of uncertain circumstances, and we have to hold on to several packages of information while making judgments about other things that are out of routine on a daily basis. This, in and of itself, provides a sense of cognitive overload. And that overload stops us from being able to better focus on the minutiae of life. And so, as we focus on the 5 big things happening now, my mind will likely not focus on where I have just put down my keys. So that means that there is not likely anything wrong with you, nor that your cognition is flying out the window. Forgetfulness is, in fact, a possible way that anxiety presents itself to you. Now, one way to counteract it, as we said in video number 4, is to set out a new routine that helps keep you on track and decrease that information overload. In addition to that, anything that you do to enhance your diet or engage in physical exercise will also be helpful in terms of counteracting anxiety and moving you to a place of balance. The 8th item on our list is what I'm calling irritability. Yeah, being mad and being in a generally bad mood is a way that anxiety can present itself. The reason for this is that at this uncertain time, many of us experience not just uncertainty and transition, but also the sense of threat. Threat is one of the primary triggers for a sense of anger. Now, anger carries with it some serious costs, both to us personally as well as to our relationships. It's a well-known fact that being in a state of anger has some very physical reactions within our bodies that themselves affect such things as cardiovascular health and other systems that could be dangerous over time. This is probably not something that's going to increase our ability to better balance at a time of upheaval and transition. But secondly, there is a relational component to this. It is very likely that people who are close to us that we have to deal with daily, whether they are coworkers or colleagues or partners or family members, could in fact be experiencing anxiety themselves in a way that makes them more irritable. The problem here, of course, is that 2 irritable people together can work to create unnecessary conflict. And of course, that conflict in and of itself will further move us to greater anxiety and create a negative feedback loop. So I encourage you to take part in activities that help first identify, understand, and quell feelings of irritability and anger within you. Things like meditation and mind wandering and mindfulness, all things discussed in video 4 in this series. Together, they can help you find new footing and get a handle on your anxiety and avoid unnecessary pain that might come from not recognizing it. The 9th thing on our list is what I'm calling loneliness. Now, loneliness can come at us in 2 ways. In one way, some of us react to our anxiety by wanting to not burden loved ones with how we're feeling, and so without meaning to, we pull away. That pulling away can result in a sense of loneliness within us, of being alone. That in itself exacerbates anxiety. Remember, everything is a feedback loop. Now, another way that loneliness can crop up is in a very physical, kind of mundane way. The reality is our semi-isolated state these days has pulled us away from people that we love very much. Perhaps we cherished seeing those people. And as a result, we might be missing people who are close to us. That also will propagate a sense of loneliness, which could drive a sense of isolation and further our anxiety. So if you're experiencing loneliness at this time, one of the things that can be done about it, as trite as it sounds, is to use connectivity applications on our devices. Connect with loved ones there. At least we'll be able to see each other's faces until we can see each other in person. It may not sound like much, but it'll go a long way to counteracting this particular sneaky form of anxiety. The 10th item on our list is what I'm calling nostalgia. Have you noticed that perhaps you are thinking a lot about distant memories, things that happened a long time ago, perhaps memories from your childhood, or long periods of time where things were great in the past, perhaps with a sense of yearning or longing to go back there. Many of my executive clients are experiencing the same thing. And the reason for that is very similar to the reasons we've already discussed. The past feels more understandable, and today feels much less so. And so, emotionally, we are driven to fantasize about a time where we felt more in control and felt more like we understood what this world is about. If you're experiencing this kind of nostalgia, although in some moments it might feel very pleasant, I encourage you to take a bit of a deep dive and explore whether or not these are just pleasant memories for you, or whether they are, in fact, a sneaky way anxiety is cropping up. The last item on our list is what I'm calling reactivation. Now, what I mean by this is that many people experience mental health conditions that they work on very genuinely with their whole heart and commitment, and very likely have made good progress on those conditions. It is very possible that in this uncertain transitional time, considering all the pressures put on us both cognitively, physically, and emotionally, that you may be experiencing a reactivation of some of those mental health conditions. Now, this is not necessarily a backsliding. This could very well be just the compounding of anxiety over top of everything else, presenting itself to you in that particular way. So we have discussed 11 sneaky, unseen ways that anxiety could crop up on you and show itself to you. Now, in this video, I didn't spend a lot of time talking about what you can do about that anxiety. And the reason for that is because former videos in this series really spelled out several personal actions we can actually undertake on our own, never mind collectively, to counteract anxiety. If you haven't seen those videos, I encourage you to go back and take a look, because each of the actions named in those videos would be useful for any one of the items on our list today. In the meanwhile, I would like to remind you that although anxiety is powerful, you are more powerful. You can conquer this and will do so, and in the end, all will be well. As always, if you have questions or comments, please leave them in the section below. I will be sure to answer them, and if there's any topics you'd like to see me put a video on, please tell me. I will do that. Please consider subscribing to this channel, as it would mean a lot to me. Until my next video, please be well and stay safe.